And I would like to welcome you at our end of the year concluding event of our program. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Miklós Barabás, and I'm representing the host organization, European House, a pro-European civil society organization based in Budapest. But at the same time, I'm also representing as initiator or coordinator of a network of civil society organizations across the 4 macro regions, even beyond. We are going to discuss this story a little bit later during the debate. I would like to welcome you, and not only you, but also those who joined us online, because this is a hybrid event. So there will be quite a number of participants who join us using internet. Just to explain how, why, and we came together close to Christmas and what the basic objective of our gathering today. This is what I would call the Third Macro-Regional Citizens Agora. The name indicates also the type of event what we are going to have, namely that it is on one hand that there will be, let's say, inputs to our debate, but at the same time we would like to develop it into an open discussion where contributions are most welcome. This is the third time that we organize this Agora. It is part of our three-year program under the title Stronger Together, the Magic of Macro Regions. We started it in 2023, then we continued last year, and this is the concluding event of our program. I would like to use this opportunity and thank to the European Commission and also to our physical host, the representation of the Commission, for their generous support to make our program happen. What we plan to do with our first element of our program today, to have a substantial input on an issue what is a common concern, I think, for all of you who are here, namely what future we imagine for Europe, what processes would shape the future of Europe. And a lucky coincidence, because when we planned the whole thing, we were not fully aware that it will be coinciding with the summit meeting of the European heads of states and presidents, prime ministers, so the political VIPs of the member states having a meeting in Brussels, as you know very well, and we are expecting, well, let's be optimistic, positive outcome, but we will see. Perhaps Professor Balázs, our speaker, will also address this issue in a certain way. But the point is that with this, I wanted to indicate that our intention was and is to have a knowledgeable person who has the necessary, not only knowledge, but experience and also vision to think about the future of, to speak about the future of Europe. And Professor Péter BALÁZS is an ideal person in that respect, not only because back in 2004, when the whole story for Hungary as a full-fledged member of the member country of the European Union started. And he was the first commissioner representing Hungary, but he has also been a prime minister, and I'm not going to enumerate all his titles and functions. I apologize. Big mistake, but thank you for the correction. It was actually a kind of testing whether you are attentive. Yes, congratulations. I hope that this intellectual alert will also remain throughout the whole program. So I'm not going to enumerate all his previous and current functions, because this is not the first time that we welcome here at our meeting, and we are looking forward to follow his presentation with great interest. Just to have a time frame for the whole procedure for the first part of this program, we will have this meeting till 11:30, which means that there will be an initial input, a presentation or a lecture, what we call the annual lecture by Professor BALÁZS, and then we will have an open discussion, as it is a usual feature of our gathering. Namely, I would like to invite you to reflect on the presentation and then you can obviously put questions or comments. Hopefully it will be a lively debate, but we would conclude by 11:30. I think that's what I wanted to say at this stage. We are quite optimistic that as the title of his presentation indicates, Reinventing Europe, how cooperation or collaboration shapes our future, is a kind of indication that we would like to have a forward-looking approach to all the issues that we are going to discuss, hopefully in a realistic but at the same time optimist note. So with this introduction, I would like to invite Professor BALÁZS to share your ideas and see what perspectives you have in mind, what I would say a positive message, what you have, if any, for us and for our broader international participants. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Miklós. Ladies and gentlemen, I spent several years of my life in Brussels, altogether some 7 years, plus many visits, but today I wouldn't like to be in Brussels. I listened to the radio this morning, and this is not only the usual blocking of the center by police, because so many important politicians are coming, but there is a demonstration of farmers with tractors, and so that is a fantastic situation, war conditions. The timing of your conference for today is really fantastic, because this is coinciding with the European Summit meeting, and this is the last summit this year, concluding the Danish presidency of the Council, and preparing next year. Cyprus is coming in the chair of the presidency, followed by Ireland. I am crossing my fingers for Cyprus, because this is a very heavy task for a smaller country with a limited administration, but usually there are helps. The secret help of Cyprus is usually Greece. So they delegate some people to fulfill all the duties. And after that comes Ireland. I attended several Irish presidencies in Brussels. This is always full of fun because they are bringing their dancers, the fantastic Irish music and dancers, and there are many performances. But the Irish presidency is highly disciplined. There is a strict leadership of the council meetings. We start sharp at 9, for instance, the Coreper meetings, and then we finish in time, and there is an order. So I express my hopes in that context. What is on the agenda of today's summit meeting? First of all, Ukraine, of course. How to use the frozen assets. According to international sources, this topic is on the agenda. We had some declarations of the Hungarian Prime Minister yesterday that this has been removed from the agenda. Nobody confirmed it. So far as I know, that issue remains on the agenda of the meeting. Then we have the farmers on the streets, and in the room there is the discussion about the future of the common agricultural policy in the context of the next long-term budget, the multi-annual financial framework for the coming 7-year period. And also in that context, the approval of a major free trade agreement with Mercosur, the zone of South America, which has a very heavy agricultural part. And of course, for the first time at that high level of heads of government, the multi-annual financial framework will be discussed as well. So it's an extremely important issue. Now, I was asked to speak about the future of Europe, reinventing Europe. And on such occasions, we think back on the glorious times of the European Union, because it has started with fantastic initial assets, set enthusiastic long-term objectives for Europe. There was a very strong internal political support for integration. The politicians were not obliged or didn't need some asking back the people, because there was a positive spirit of integration. In political science, we called it the permissive consensus of the people, permitting the progress of integration on a consensus basis. And there was a general mandate for the governments to do it because it's something good. There was also a strong external support, first of all, from the United States. When the EU stepped up as an international actor, the first state to recognize the European communities as a partner was the United States. The first diplomatic representation in Brussels to the EU was established by the US. Today, the situation is slightly different. And an additional asset was that there was no third power outside the transatlantic community to contest the existence and the utility of the EU. Today, we have Russia, first of all, putting question marks to European unification. All that happened in the spirit of post-war reconciliation. And the world considered the EU as a model for post-conflict peace and cooperation. Former enemies were sitting at the same table and followed the well-known model of German-French reconciliation, which was really a brilliant example. But there were many others which are perhaps less known, because there was a Dutch-German reconciliation. I could follow closely the Danish German reconciliation. I used to be ambassador to Denmark, and then I had the opportunity to learn more about that issue. There was a Polish-German reconciliation, a Czech-German reconciliation, and we could go on a procedure which led to the well-known declaration of Chancellor Helmut Kohl, who said that for the first time in history, Germany is surrounded only by friends. And it was a very important declaration because Germany has 9 neighbors, the highest number in Europe. In continental Europe, we have 7 neighbors. Poland has 7 neighbors, but Germany has 9 neighbors. And that's true that all the 9 neighbors have a kind of confidence in Germany and cooperate with this big country. So on the basis of that post-conflict reconciliation, there were some fundamental principles like unity in diversity, accepting the diversity of the participants and creating unity on that basis. Sovereign equality of the member states. It comes from the UN Charter. This is a fundamental principle of the United Nations, the sovereign equality of states. All states are equal. Sometimes it is not very easy. When we were sitting, for instance, in the Council, to accept the real equality of Germany and Malta, with all due respect to the equality of all states. But when we speak about the contributions of the member states to the EU budget, then there are visible differences between and among the member states. We could agree on common values and norms and launch a common legislation for the whole of the EU, which has a lot of positive results in consumer protection. There is a dangerous toy for children, and then when we realize it, then we can block the selling of that product all over the EU within 24 hours. It's very useful. We have common institutions that work, and we have frequent meetings. Sometimes when people put questions about the use of the EU, I like to answer that an organization which attracts regularly the highest level politicians in Europe for meetings every month or every second month, which is the case right today, must be a good one. If they find a time and they take cars and planes for going to Brussels and sitting at the same table and trying to find common solutions together. The European economic integration started in optimal conditions under the security shelter of NATO. NATO was created in 1949, and it permitted a closer economic integration for 6 members, which is an interesting structure because a larger security structure gave green light to the closer economic cooperation of 6 member states. Just remember that it was not possible within the Soviet-led Warsaw Pact because it was strictly forbidden to do anything without the surveillance and presence of the Soviet Union. There were some dreams in Eastern Europe, Central Eastern Europe, that we could go. It was, the nickname was Small Comecon or something like that, similar to the Visegrad cooperation, but also including Romania and Yugoslavia. It was not possible. Only with the big brother and under the Warsaw Pact surveillance. And we could come to a fantastic spirit when I had the the first entry to the EU after closing the negotiations. I used to be the first permanent representative to Hungary in 2003, before the accession date. This is the meeting, the weekly meeting of the EU ambassadors, which is called COREPER, the Council of Permanent Representatives, a very important body. And those ambassadors have an exceptional mandate because we are authorized to take decisions on the spot. Of course, there is always a mandate from home. But when I was nominated, I met an old Finnish friend who told me, very nice job, accept it only if you have the mobile number of the prime minister and you can call him at any time, even in the middle of the night. And I asked him that why. He said, because you will be in a situation when you will need a direct mandate in the middle of the night from your prime minister to accept or reject a decision. And he was perfectly right, because that situation happened. And okay, then we entered this meeting for the first time with all the colleagues, and we could experience this very friendly spirit of low conflict level, of an understanding for each other, of listening each other, and trying to find solutions on the basis of an agreement. So not opposing, not rejecting, not vetoing. It was not a usual thing to put in a veto, but to look for solutions. And if we cannot find a solution, then it's better to postpone that issue for the next meeting and sending out a committee or asking some member states for consultations. So to do something in order to find a harmonious solution. So this was the basic spirit. And on that basis, and here I come to the first element of the answer, the EU could set long-term political objectives. And one was for the internal cooperation, the well-known ever closer union. So to go on that way and to increase the level of cooperation, an ever closer union, which is contested by several political actors today. And the other one for the outside, which is today Article 49 of the treaty, all European states can apply for membership. It was so the two maybe maximalist objectives that we are going on for deepening the EU, and we are open for accepting all European states. However, that openness and that ambitious program has brought us to a kind of a catch-22 situation, because today we are victims and to some extent hostages of our own success, because we have deepened and enlarged the European Union, and that structure started with 6 member states, and at the beginning there were 3 common policies. Today we have 27 member states, and we have around 20 sectors where we are cooperating. So just imagine the 2 matrices, one 6 by 3, and today 27 by 20. Today we have too many actors and too many sectors. And that's a problem. It's a rather complicated organization. In addition, we have a hidden dimension, which is the multitude of competencies. At the beginning, there was member state competence and common competencies. Today, we have at least 5 different levels. Mixed competencies, then the interstate cooperation in foreign policy, and some others. In addition, we have maintained something which is blocking our flexibility today. This is the omnipresence of the member states. Member states are everywhere, represented directly. Example is the European Commission, where each member state has a commissioner. And today we have a 27-member commission. We don't have 27 jobs for them. So it's a problem because a well-structured government in Europe needs around 15 ministers. In some countries, there are more. In Nordic countries, very open and democratic countries, there are more than 20 ministers. There are counterexamples. In Hungary, for instance, in 2010, there were 11 members of the government only. So we are working mainly in what we can call a general assembly mode. In a company, you have the board, you have the directors, and from time to time, you call together the General Assembly. We are always working in Brussels in General Assembly mode today as well, because all the actors are there in the room, and we don't have that differentiation between the General Assembly and a smaller limited body for implementing the decisions of the General Assembly. And we came until the situation of today, which is characterized by two very important conflict areas. One is the Russian war in Ukraine. The other one is a turn in the United States foreign policy. And Europe is squeezed between those two big partners. What happened on the eastern flank? There was a continuous expansion of the West after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union just collapsed by its own weight and by its own internal contradictions. Nobody defeated the Soviet Union. The Cold War ended by a simple collapse of one of the two boxers. It was not hit directly, it just laid down on the ground and folded into pieces into 15 states, the former Soviet republics. 3 of them turned immediately towards the West, the 3 Baltic countries, and achieved successfully their accession to EU and NATO. The other 12 made some attempts to cooperate with each other, but they had different motivations. The Europeans looked towards the West, Ukraine, Belarus, Moldavia, even the Caucasus countries, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Central Asia has opened the windows and looked around, and there was China in the direct neighborhood with a dynamic economy, the Arabic countries, the Islam world, and so on. So this was a new situation. And the West went on in attracting countries. The well-known Eastern Partnership of the European Union, which was launched in 2009. I had the chance to be in that room in Prague as a foreign minister at the initial session of that new structured Eastern Partnership. We offered open-armed potential and rapprochement to post-Soviet European countries, 6 of them. And there was one warning. We listened Chancellor Angela Merkel, and she was the only one remarking that let's not forget Russia, because Russia is there behind those countries, and Russia is an important partner. And later on, I realized that even the title of that initiative was maybe not the best one, saying Eastern Partnership. I visited many times Ukraine, mainly Kiev. And if you ask somebody that what's the meaning of Eastern Partnership for you, then people say, yeah, well, Eastern partner is Russia, seen from Ukraine. You are Western partners. You are European partners. Why don't you call it European partnership? And they were perfectly right. So it was seen from Brussels, seen from the two who launched the initiative, Sweden and Poland, that our Eastern partners. The intention was very positive. The name was maybe not the best one. And then on that basis, we started to build up association type relations with those partners. And then came the moment of signing an association agreement with Ukraine. You may remember end of November 2013 was that day, and to the greatest surprise of everybody, President Yanukovych of Ukraine stopped and didn't put his signature on the paper. It was a great surprise. At the same time, in my view, it was a diplomatic failure, because diplomats have to know it in advance whether that action would or would not take place. And then started the internal conflict in Ukraine. People went down the Maidan place protesting for Europe, opposing the action of the president who was influenced quite obviously by Russia, by President Putin. The internal revolution broke out and went on. And after that, shortly after that, Russia occupied the Crimea, made use of that confused situation and put its hand on Crimea. And so it has started, and it went on with the Donbass, where the green, little green man, you remember the soldiers, extremely well-equipped soldiers, speaking Russian, but without any sign of a state, invaded the Donbass. And later on, Russia started that war, which is not called war in the Russian version. It's a special operation. And we are still in this situation after almost 4 years of a terrible war in Ukraine, which is a new type of war, mainly air-based. So missiles and drones are coming, first of all, in the night. And at daylight, people are living their everyday life in Ukraine, which is very different from the Second World War. And this is a terror on the civil population. This is highly targeted, very precisely guided missiles on infrastructure and energy, mainly. We are in that situation, and all what we could hope that NATO is strong enough to support Ukraine. Yes, if NATO is united. But if there is a growing division between the European part of NATO and the United States with the actual president, we may have some doubts, mainly after the publication a few days ago of the new security strategy of the United States. It came out on the 5th of December. And this is now the first reading for all political analysts in the world to find out the intentions of the president. We know well that in the US administration, that document, the security strategy, is a declaration of the president himself. So this is a presidential paper. And we could recognize the identity between that paper and the famous speech of Vice President Vance at the Munich Security Conference in February. Then we were taken by surprise because he made some interesting declarations about Europe, some very critical remarks on Europe. He didn't want to meet the Chancellor of Germany in Munich. He refused to meet the Chancellor Scholz. At the same time, he was meeting Alice Weidel, the co-president of AfD, the extreme right party. Now we have a written document on all that, criticizing Europe, and I quote, because of economic stagnation, even decline. Poor Europe is in decline, according to US evaluation, where political liberty and sovereignty are undermined. There is a regulatory suffocation, and migration changes the majority of population into non-Europeans. You can clearly recognize the narratives of the extreme right political parties in that document. It's nothing else. It's not a state-level evaluation of the situation. This is a party-level speech about how extreme right people, not even the whole Republican Party, but the right wing of the Republican Party, those who are organizing the CPAC meetings and others, they are their position. And if we look at those two big partners, Russia on the one hand and the US on the other hand, we can find that those under the actual leadership are a kind of nostalgic powers. You can identify that nostalgia by looking for the main elements of political narratives. In the US, which is the main message, the MAGA, Make America Great Again, as in the past. So looking back, let's be as big as we used to be back in time. And what is the main objective of the actual Russian leadership? To reconstitute, at least partly, the glory of the Soviet Union. I have an interesting memory from the systemic change times in Hungary. From end of 89, beginning of 90, big turn. And I had a French friend visiting us who didn't speak a word in Hungarian. And he was looking into my newspapers. I was reading the newspapers, and he pointed to some dates. And you said you have only past dates because the newspapers were full with 1956, okay, 1945, yes, 1920, 1867, 1848, 49. So in all the texts, he pointed to those dates. I said, what about the future? You have no single future date in your political documents. And he was perfectly right. Because we tried to digest and to explain our own past, and we were turning back. This is very interesting to analyze for diplomats when you are in a foreign country and you try to discover the political motivations, whether they are speaking mostly about the past or about the future. And it's good if we are dealing with the future, if we are dealing with the next generations, with our children and grandchildren, and not dreaming about past things. We have to know the past, and we have to understand the past. But those two big powers are somehow lost in their past for the moment. And this is not a good direction. They were the two liberators at the end of the Second World War, and now they are somehow blocking our own future. There was an interesting meeting a few days ago in Berlin, 15th of December, when a new structure came together in Europe. And this is a promising development. We call it the coalition of the willing. It has no own organization. It is based on the transatlantic structures, on EU and NATO. Both EU and NATO are present. The leaders, Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO, Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa from the European Union, they are there. They are supporting, helping that structure. But this is something more. This is something more, embracing everybody, embracing the two organizations and beyond, because Canada is there, very good NATO member. Norway is there, a very active member now, but Japan and Australia are also supporting. And what is the common denominator of that coalition? Supporting Ukraine. So this is the objective which brought together all those participants, using the structures and the mechanisms of NATO, of EU, and going beyond. Being very flexible, there is no rule of procedures. It is an ad hoc meeting called together, started with Macron. Macron launched it first. There is the big trio, English, German, French trio, but there are other very active members. So what is the future of Europe? How can we shape it? On the one hand, we have excellent strategic objectives. Going even beyond the next budget, we have long-term transport plans, a transport network plan for 2050, a comprehensive network of multimodal transport corridors for Europe. We have environment programs, we have energy network programs, so we are planning the future. In the last decades, we have some fantastic plans, and we came near to those objectives, like with a common currency for Europe. We have the euro, and more countries are joining. Even if it was not perfect, it was a kind of an unfinished business, because without a fiscal lag, a currency cannot really be stable. But under the pressure of the 2008 economic crisis, we improved, or they improved it in Brussels. We have the Schengen zone. The Schengen zone is, again, a very nice initiative, and it was perfectly planned for internal use. But nobody cared about what happens when external people invade Europe. When the 2015 migration wave reached Europe, then I opened the Schengen agreement looking for provisions. What should we do? And there is a provision that citizens of third countries can enter the Schengen zone at official entry points during office hours. Now compare it with the 2015 situation, that lining up during office hours when tens of thousands came. So we had no rule, no procedure for that. So we had those fantastic idealistic targets, and we made it with a very strong political support from the member states, but they remained partly unfinished and need some later improvement. And the same happened. I had the chance to be in the European Convention, which was called together at the beginning of the century, 2002 and 2003, with the task of drafting a constitution for Europe. So to put an end to those permanent modifications of the basic treaty, to draft a constitution. It was a fantastic experience, a very creative body. Candidate countries like Hungary were also invited. And we have drafted very nice ideas, but it was voted down first by the French, to the greatest surprise of everybody. So when we had a draft constitution, then it was submitted to referenda in some countries. And a few days later, Netherlands voted it down, and it was blocked for at least 2 years. And then after a new initiative, it has been launched, and we have got partly trimmed and reduced the text of the Lisbon Treaty, which is good in itself, but it is not the maximalist constitution. So that happened. We were building our own world in the EU, and then came external shocks. The economic crisis, 2008, we mentioned the migration crisis, the pandemic, the COVID, and the war today. So these are real external challenges. We cannot dream about our own future, but we have to react what is happening in the world, and the reactions are quite good. Now, I should finish, and let me say some closing words about our tools. How can we handle those situations? One very important tool is the budget. This is defining all our maneuvering margin. And today, for the first time, heads of government will discuss the draft. The draft is very ambitious for the years of 2028-34. Just imagine how old we will be in 2034. I don't like to think about it myself, but this is a long-term decision. And the Commission puts on the table the first draft. And the first draft is about 1,763 billion euros for the 7 years. It's a very high amount. It is 1.26% of the gross national income of the whole EU. The magic number is much less, is around 1%. So the contributing states try to push it down in order not to pay too much, and to limit it to 1 point something, not very high. But the first draft is 1.26%. The draft is by 500 billion euros more than the actual budget, actual 700. It's a very bold initiative. There are some question marks for me, with a bit of experience behind me on cohesion policy. I don't find it a very good idea to put cohesion policy and the agriculture policy in the same basket. These are two different policies, and the policy needs clear objectives. What should we do with agriculture in the EU? And what should we do with more cohesion between and among member states? So the mixing up the two and putting in the same basket seems to be a bad idea for me. And there is a second layer of that approach, to take this big amount of the two different policies and to distribute it in national envelopes. So to give it to the member states directly. Again, this is getting rid of the responsibility of the European Union. The EU and the Commission, in cooperation with the Parliament and the Council, should take care of the yearly implementation of those policies and to follow it, to do it, and to discuss it. So this is one big question. We will see. There is a very good chapter in the draft about the headline of competitiveness of Europe, very important point, which would make out about 30%, almost 1/3 of the whole budget, about decarbonization, digital turn, biohealth policies and increasing the resilience, which is a fashionable word now, so the potential of resisting to external challenges and the defense spending. This is one issue. A second one is institutional reforms. We would need some institutional simplification in the EU. There are too many meetings, too many papers. We could launch a slimming diet for the EU. But what we need is a political support, political agreement. We had it by the year 2000. This was a miraculous time when everybody expected the British to agree with launching this constitution operation, which resulted in the convention. And to the greatest surprise of all of us, the British said, okay, we would take part with one request, one condition, if you like. There is a very ugly word in the EU by F. Don't use it, please. And we were wondering, what is that ugly word by F? This is federation. So don't speak about federation. And if you can do that, we will be there. And they were there, and they agreed with many, many things. It was much before the Brexit. So we would need institutional reforms, but we would need a stronger political support, and conditions are not given for that. And the third and last issue is that in the Council, we would need much more unity. Today, that European Council is meeting. I was mainly in the Council of Foreign Ministers. And if you are sitting in an EU body, you see the member states, and you see also the dynamism of change, because every second month there is election somewhere in the EU. And in an average year, you have 6 or 7 new governments somewhere. This is clear mathematics, because with the 4-year period plus unexpected road accidents in the member state politics, you have new members. And almost every meeting of the foreign ministers started with a welcome address that we welcome the new colleague from Lithuania. Welcome in the club. So nice. Well, congratulations to your victory at the elections. And well, we are very glad. And then we could see the change. I remember the time when Berlusconi was out and the new Italian government came. The spirit changed. So mainly when big countries have a new face around the table. Now, what will happen if I consider only the time until the entry into force of the new budget? We had 2 recent elections. Governments are just being set up in the Czech Republic and in the Netherlands. These are the newest. Next year, 26, we have, first of all, elections in Germany, not at the federal level, but in 5 lands, which is very important. In March, in the West, Baden-Württemberg, Rhineland-Pfalz. And later in September, 3 on the East, which is Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, Sachsen-Anhalt, and Berlin, which is a land in itself. So in 5 lands, there can be changes. And the main question is, what about the AfD? What about the AfD? Because mainly on the eastern side, they are rather strong. After that, we will have an election in France, Senate election. Not yet the presidential, which comes 1 year later. And elections, national elections, parliamentary elections in Denmark, Latvia, Slovenia, Sweden, and Hungary. So looking forward, there's quite many events. And what about 27? Then comes the French presidential election, which is a great opportunity for Rassemblement National. Estonia, Finland, Greece, Italy, Malta, Poland, Slovakia, Spain. A very long list. And if you add all those together, just only the coming 2 years, then before the approval of the next budget, there will be elections in 15 member states, which is the majority of the member states. So you can see this changing mosaic picture, and these governments will approve the budget with the changing political directions. I would stop here, Miklós. I'm afraid I was too long, but I think that we have to keep our watching eyes, first of all, on the war issue, the two big brothers on the two sides with nostalgic policies, the new budget, the institutions, and we haven't mentioned yet future enlargements, but enlargements are mainly blocked, not a major issue, and the biggest question is, of course, the future, European future of Ukraine. I will stop here. Thank you very much for your